Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, John Barker is going to be here he is here from Here2Record. He's got some new product announcements, and then he's going to walk us through that today. So we're excited for that for the second hour. Thursday, we're going to have a Office Hours 2.0 update. So we're going to tell you where we're at with that. Friday, of course, we have the future of co-working. So what are these co-working spaces going to look like? And then a reminder that on tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Conversations with Tony Mobley will have Lois Richter. And so he's going to be interviewing her. So that's tonight, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard. And you can just search Conversations with Tony Mobley on YouTube to find that link. Saturday is the long day. We have, of course, education from 8 to 10. Killer conversation that we don't put on YouTube. So you have to come to Zoom to check that out. And we have, of course, the Super Saturday, the end of the year. And we actually have a little video to show you about what's going to be coming up. Go ahead, Dennis.
This year, the shortest Saturday of the year brings a long day with a difference. Super Saturday! Super Saturday! The 18th of December will bring a day of live broadcasts from Office Hours members around the world. The day starts at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time with an hour of live Q&A from Office Hours! Office Hours! Immediately followed by the Education Hour, only available on Zoom. Then at 11 a.m., Shannon Cooper hosts the Office Hours Cooking Show. Shannon, Alex Lindsay, and Dennis Champion Walker cook along with Damiante Gajar, who will be making Mexican rice. At midday, Todd Reynolds brings us a live concert from his studio in North Adams, Massachusetts. Then at 1 p.m., we cross to the Accidental Theatre in Belfast for an hour of entertainment with The Belfast Method. And at 2 p.m., we bring you a special edition of Conversations with Tony Mobley. Featuring Todd Reynolds, Asma Gajar, and Richard Lavery. Super Saturday lineup here on Office Hours. Bring the whole family. Here we are, Office Hours. Here we are, Office Hours. Here we are, Office Hours. Let's go.
Okay. I did not see that coming.
I like the subtlety.
Yeah, exactly. The best part about it was really quiet and it was really funny.
I like the little voice in there. Hello!
Yeah, I know. It was like we brought the Smurfs in. So anyway, that was good. It's fun. All right, let's jump into the questions.
All right, our first question actually references me. TJ Asher says, Bill sounds great today. What was the solution to the audio problem from yesterday?
Go ahead, Bill.
Go to it, Alex. Okay. Basically, it was a patching problem in Zoom. I have a little bit of complexity to my audio issue since I have a voice booth about 30 feet to the left of me, and it has to come in, and my system has to go out to it. I had managed to get my audio Zoom connection in Zoom mispatched. So it was as simple as switching that to audio from Zoom.
It wasn't actually in Zoom, right? It was in Loopback.
No, it was in Zoom. It was the Zoom targeting for audio.
But I think what we changed that fixed it was the Loopback. Well, you're right. Routing to Loopback was the issue.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, actually routing to the Universal Audio Apollo thing, it was looping into that. Right. I don't think it was actually Loopback, although that might have been enabling it.
Loopback was actually what fixed it. What happened is that and I had forgotten that Zoom did this. Zoom will look at all the channels and just simply sum them. You know, if you show something with 8 channels, and so Bill has his return signals going back into the Universal Audio, it was basically summing those back in to the system. Because it was grabbing all the channels from the Universal Audio, and Zoom was just grabbing all of them and summing them into the 2 channels. By using Loopback, we were able to, Loopback cuts out only the first 2 channels and sends them to Zoom, so that Zoom is limited in the number of channels that it actually sees. So that was and I would love to say that I came up with that, but it was, it was a Mickey.
Mickey came in and just crushed it.
Yeah, it took us a lot of time bouncing around. It took Mickey about I would say about 90 seconds, maybe 120 seconds to figure this out. So anyway, I think
At
it was
the
mostly,
end, he said to me, in Zoom settings, change in microphone. What does it say? And I said, it says audio to the interface. He said, switch that to audio to Zoom.
And then
boom.
It
Fixed
was
it.
all done. Yeah, exactly. So there you go. Let's go to the next question.
Next question comes to us from Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York. And Scott says, besides office hours itself, are there any good examples of online events that are successfully expressing the shift away from talking and PowerPointing at the audience and moving towards conversation?
I think that the one example that we talked about earlier this year was the one that Hosmuk did with the medical community, where they basically sent the videos to the folks that were going, the participants, let them watch them ahead of time, and then just opened it up to Q&A. I think that's the one that we've talked about publicly. I mean, I've done a couple of them that are like that, and that's the model that really works. I don't think I can talk to some of the ones that I have in public, but a bunch of the stuff that we've done more privately, the most successful model has been, I'll send you the content that you want to, that you can watch, and then we'll have a conversation. And maybe there's 3 to 5 minutes at the beginning to give you a summary, but the rest of the hour is all conversation. What we found is that only about 15% of the people through asking people what they did later, if 15% of the people actually watch the videos, the conversation will be great and people will get about 80% of the content, which is a crazy math, does not make sense at all, except that it's true. So basically, if you just show everybody the videos, some people will watch them. Those people will have an educated conversation, and everyone else will learn most of what they needed to get out of it. And they're also much more engaged and much more connected to what's actually happening. I think here in office hours, we've been pretty successful at it to make that work. And then I think the other place that we saw some success in this area is the Apple Tech Talks. So Apple has been doing Tech Talks for the last couple months. This used to be something they went on tour, and they went from city to city to city to show, and they've moved it to to putting out Tech Talks. I think this is the last week, the last couple of days of it. But what they do is they have a little bit of a presentation, probably more presentation than I would do. But they then open it up. So most of the conversation is generally just asking the engineers questions about everything from object capture to maps or whatever they're talking about. And that seems really successful. There's been a lot of good feedback, I think, people that I've talked to that said that that's much more fun to watch than watching someone, have, death by PowerPoint. So anyway, I think that people are slowly getting their head around it. Next question.
Jeffrey Powers is up next from Madison, Wisconsin. And here in the panel, he says, Charles, do you have any recommendations for color cards under $50 US?
Go ahead, Charles.
Good morning, Jeffrey. I would recommend this Data Color Spider Checker. One, because, it's under the price target. Two, it has a very large gray card in the back, and we'll get into that for a second. Also, three, it's one of the cards inside of Resolve, and I believe it's still in the free version of Resolve that you could actually check. And that's important because not all color checker cards are in Resolve, and you have to make sure that you know that. Like a lot of the higher end cards, very few of them are. This is actually in there, which is great for people that are just starting. And if you use the free version of Resolve, you can make yourself a quick LUT. And the reason why I tend to obsess over the gray card is because in larger, let's say, post-production pipelines, you expose for that along the pipeline, especially now that we're all going to HDR. That can't change along the pipeline because you'll see a crazy shift. So I would suggest getting used to, as you color check your stuff, check your gray. If your gray is off, then everything else will be kind of off as well. You'd be surprised how quickly everything else falls into place if your middle gray is spot on, because that's what the sensor is looking for.
That's great. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Charles, you mean this spider checker? I just picked it up on sale for under $50.
And it has it, and it swings out, so it's two sides, right? It's not just they have a different one that appears to be just gray on one side and color on the other, but this one seems to have.
Well, you can switch them. The magnet, I just switched mine. You can switch it out, so it's just a double-sided card.
Got it. Okay, very good. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Paul Wallace here and it says the Webb Space Telescope launch date is set for December 22nd, 2021 at 7:20 Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. Are we or is anyone planning a watch party?
Go ahead, Courtney.
There are a lot of people planning watch parties. If you go on the Celebrate Webb at these events, there's a map of all the events in the United States, and if you zoom out, there's a lot of events all over the world, and they're organized by live events, combo events, blue only or online only, and green is both, and yellow is in person. So there's a lot of places to celebrate, and in office hours, if we celebrate the launch and then watch it till it reaches its parking space, it'll take about a month. So it'll be a long event.
I have a feeling that a bunch of us will be there by about 4 o'clock in the morning on 4 o'clock in the morning on Pacific Standard, 7 o'clock in the morning on Eastern Standard on after hours. So definitely expect at least I'll be there. So anyway, so we can see. So we should all, if we're interested in doing a little party around it, we'll just do it in after hours. Next question.
Next question from Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he says the suggestion of an office hours glossary was recently made to explain cryptic office hours terms as well as broadcasting terminology commonly thrown around here. Might this glossary live on the website, and how may we contribute or request these explanations?
Go ahead, Rupert.
My video's crashed, but I was just going to say that I think that we should not try and reinvent the wheel in here, and to try and keep our glossary to things that maybe are just custom to office hours. And if there are things that are already well defined out in the wider world, we should just point to those resources.
Go ahead, Sky.
Yes, I'd found a film terminology website because we use a lot of the same concepts. So using that, I put that in the Discord.
Yeah, I think that what we're probably going to do is do it again. I think we talked a little bit about it yesterday. Is we'll be responsive to the folks that ask questions. So if you ask I have talked to Ken about exactly how this is going to work, but there's probably going to be a form that you fill out. Like, I would like this a very, very small form. I would like this term defined. I would like this term defined, and it'll be somewhere where you can just ask for it. We're not going to just start filling stuff out that we think belongs there. And then I think that what we'll do is we'll have, this is a brief thing of what that means. And then to Rupert's point, we'll have links to it of other places that you can study, about this. So we're not going to try to build a ultimate, encyclopedia, but more of a description of what we meant by that. And then links to the rest of the world that tell you more about it. Here's some stuff on YouTube. Here's some stuff. So I think that as a resource, it could be a different kind of glossary that is really more of a reference point to other things that you can go find that we've curated. So you don't have to. What we're saving you is, if you don't know that term, we're going to save you all the Googling and all the dead ends that go along with that. And I think that we as a group can make that happen. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, we might consider also that things like HDR don't have really good glossaries at this point in time because it's still kind of in development. So right. we might benefit the community and those outside of our community by maybe picking some of those areas that need a little bit better explanations and hitting on them.
Yeah, I think that to your point, I think if we don't find satisfactory results, I think that we could definitely outline some of those. I know that the way I describe HDR sometimes makes more sense to people than what's on the web. Go ahead, Noah.
There are a lot of terms that need context too. So like within television or film or live streaming, like the same word might mean slightly different things within that context.
Yeah. And I think that our context will be our context. Like for us, this is what this thing means. So I think that it'll be valuable for a lot of people. So we're working towards that. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just going to note, there's also the issue that sometimes there's regionalisms. I know that some things stinger here and might be something else on the East Coast. So that confuses the issue sometimes too.
It won't confuse it because our term will be our term. so like, like this, when we talk about it, this is what it means. Like that's, I think that's all we can do going down that path. You'd be surprised at how quickly we can, like with Pixel Core, we just picked a definition and then everyone called it that. And then it's become something in a lot of other companies because we just made a decision that that's the way we're going to call it. Next question.
Next one comes from Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California. He says, what's the biggest weakness of your current business? I guess that's for the whole panel.
Go ahead, Doug.
Well, I tell you, I think for me personally, it's the business side of the business. That's the biggest struggle for me, because what I do is my passion. I love this stuff and I would do it for free, and I own my own company. So I work 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And it's not a problem for me because I love what I do. So sitting at this computer or in my truck doing a gig, it's what I love to do. But, I don't have a sales person. So finding business and doing the business side of things and setting prices for what I'm worth, that has been an ongoing struggle for me, because I love it's the passion and doing it, I just love it, but I need to get paid for it. And somebody did tell me that if you don't treat your business like a business, you're not going to be in business. And those words, I just had to remind myself, like, all right, it's okay to say no sometimes. And I have a hard time doing that. So, if somebody wants to be my salesperson.
No, anyway. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree with Doug. My work is my play, which probably instantly makes you a bad salesman. But whenever I delve into the area of sales, I find that educating customers is a huge challenge, because you can't tell your client in technical terms what you do that's very cool and what makes you unique. You have to have a unique selling position. And I find that a lot of times is just being able to converse with a client, to explain to them what it is that I do and how it benefits them, because otherwise they won't understand when they look bad or they sound horrible or any number of things that can happen in the process of creating a program for them. So I would say education and a subset of sales.
Go ahead, Rupert.
So I read this a little bit differently, interpreting it as what risks do you have in your kind of operation or your business. For me, I feel I've got a good level of redundancy, throughout the setup here, and
it's not false modesty to say anyone who owns and operates their own business, their inherent largest weakness is that it is owned and operated by one person. It's something taught in business school that anytime you have a small organization, the weaknesses of the individual become the weaknesses of the organization. It is inherent, and it doesn't mean that you are weak. What it means is you're one person. The plurality of people will always be better. The gestalt will always beat the individual.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Good, Paul.
Yeah, I need a good manager so I could spend more time on office hours.
There you go. There you go. All right. Next question.
Comes from Rupert McRae, and Rupert says, Zoom launched the Zoom Learning Center yesterday, an online learning platform for Zoom training and certification. They'll be offering Zoom qualifications in the future. Could this become as recognized as some of the other certificates like MSCE or the CCNA Cisco Certified Network Associate type thing?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Kind of went through this in the early Final Cut Pro days. And so there's always kind of this pushback from people who are doing it who say, I don't have time to go to get certified. And so certifications are good, but they don't have any proof that anyone actually is delivering good results.
Yeah, to get good certification, you have to kind of take a martial arts, view on it, where it has to be. You have to be perfect at it. You have to be able to prove yourself, inside of an actual, under stress, and that doesn't happen in certification. And I don't know of anybody that actually looks at those things. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I totally agree. I don't think anybody does. When I got certified in Final Cut, it was for myself. What I wanted is I realized that my learning style, I would focus on only the things I used every day, and I wouldn't look at other parts of the program because they weren't meaningful to me. So going through certification put me in a structured curriculum where I had to look at all aspects of the program, become at least familiar with what it could do. And then when I found myself later in situations that were outside my wheelhouse, those certification trainings that I did really proved their worth to me. But as an external thing for an employer or something like that, I found them totally useless.
Good, Paul.
Yeah, the certification doesn't have a lot of meaning unless there's something that it unlocks. Like say if you got Zoom certified, you would be able to get some new level of Zoom or something. Then people would go for it more, I think.
I think that you could create certification that mattered. I just don't think that that's what this is. And I think that doing that, almost nobody does certification that matters. I've thought about it a lot, and we'll probably experiment with that here at some point. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas is up next with, can data in a Discovery server be backed up and down?
Discord server.
Discord server, sorry. Can data in a Discord server be backed up and downloaded or exported?
Not that I know of. I mean, I imagine you could probably put a bot in there that would kind of wander around and grab stuff, but I don't know of any off-the-shelf way to pull stuff off the Discord server. Next question. Oh, Paul. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I think there's no built-in mechanism as far as I know, but you could just copy and paste everything. That'd be the easiest.
A lot.
It'd be a lot of work, though.
And a constantly moving target. Next question.
Jason Janes in Mesa, Arizona is up next. He says, is there a link to that matte glare reducing makeup, Alex? I know you said the Mac product was getting hard to find, but is there an alternative that you found? Links would be appreciated.
Yeah, the one that we I got JJ to go take a picture of the one that we have in our kits, because we've had trouble also finding the Mac one. NYX Shine Killer, and I don't have the link to it. I just have a picture of it. It's like but it's NYX Shine Killer is what we ended up using, and it's very similar to the Mac product. So that might be what you might want to look at. Go ahead, Courtney.
I can't vouch for these because I don't use them, but there's a number of them that are called, clean and clear oil absorbing sheets for removing shine in makeup without disturbing makeup. So I think they're similar. They're bamboo sheets. There's a variety of them. I don't know how well they work.
The difference is they suck up oil, but if you create new oil, then they don't work. What this stuff does is it's actually microballs that diffuse everything. So once it's on there, even if a person gets a little perspirant, it'll still keep them from getting shiny. So it's a kind of a deeper de-shine. Go ahead, Rupert.
I was trying to find the Mac one that looks like you were showing the other day. Is this the one? It's matte cream. Is that the one that
let me see here.
Actually looking at?
Yeah, that's the one that we've used in the past.
Yeah, so I was trying to find this in stock anywhere. It seems everywhere is out of stock of that particular one.
Yeah, I don't know it's always been a little hard to find, and then during COVID, it got really hard to find. So I'm not sure exactly. We had to actually stop getting it as well. I just have lots of it laying around, so I still have it. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, Alex, you also gave a secret tip of a blotter that some people may not remember that story.
We found that in a pinch, the toilet seat covers, the ones there, they don't have any they don't leave any residue, but they absorb a lot of oil, and so but you have to cut them into squares. It looks funny, although you'll see me do it. I'm unrepentant. Like if I grow, I'll just like pull one out and put it right on my face and just like
hang on a sec, I'm ready for my close-up.
It's super convenient. So go ahead, Courtney.
Another thing to consider is a polarizing filter that can remove reflections on your skin. Although it does, sorry about the focus. Although it does make your skin look completely different, so you may not like the effect that it creates.
Right. Next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle, Washington, here on the panel, says, for the rest of the house, I'm setting up a new Blackhawk Wi-Fi router. Any best practices I should use?
Go, Jason.
Update your firmware. Netgear, just about every consumer grade Netgear router has had its foot firmly in its mouth for the last 6 months, and it just keeps getting exploited. So that's number one. Number two, turn off universal plug and play. Your devices will complain a little bit, but yeah, it's worth it.
Go ahead, Paul.
Sky, what model is it? And it's not it's not named the Blackhawk. It's the Nighthawk. The Nighthawk. No audio, Sky. What model do you have?
AC 1750 model R6400.
Yeah, that's a good version. Is it the gaming router or the standard router?
No, it's the standard router logit. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. You're good to go. I just update it, and Netgear has a add-on support that you can get that's worthwhile if you were to get into trouble. I got it, and I'm glad I got it because they're really good at support.
Next question.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California is up next. He says, has anyone seen soft custom in-ear monitors? My ultimate ears are a harder silicone.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I feel your pain, Noah. I've ended up with CompliFoam, CompliFoam.com. Keep in mind, you will be replacing them. The softer they are, the more malleable they are, the more they will eventually deteriorate.
Yeah, that's actually the reason that you don't see a lot of really soft ones, is because they don't last very long. So the ones that we've seen that are soft tend to be just those, exactly what Jason was talking about. They expand, and you actually don't need them to be custom, because you just push them in a little bit, stick them into your ear, and they'll just expand out to your ear. And they actually work pretty well. But yeah, I talked to actually it was Etymotic about it, and they were like, yeah, you can't make the soft ones because they just fall apart over time, and then people spend a lot of money on them, and then they're not happy, and that's the problem. Next question.
Tony Mobley is up next from Noonan, Georgia. He says, can Alex explain 2.0 to new people joining office hours? I was asked yesterday.
Go ahead, Tony.
So this is an office hour member who has been away from us for a very long time, taking care of an ill wife. And they wanted to know if a C920 would work, and just an overall understanding of what 2.0 really means.
Yeah, so I mean, 2.0 is our goal is to really build something that looks like broadcast. In fact, we think that we can get to a point where at some point it's better than broadcast, where we're really getting a signal that is in 4K HDR, eventually 5.1 sound, like really push the outer envelope. Now that's partially so that we can just train ourselves, and what does that look like, for our own broadcast. Office Hours 2.0 is not only something we're trying to do, but it's also something that we're trying to use to train each other and train ourselves. How do we build a show that we have an entire team all over the world? How do we push the outer envelope of that process? How do we take what we've learned here, which is a very interactive conversation, and make it look like what people are used to seeing? And so we're still testing all of it. You'll see an Office Hours 2.0 down here that's kind of running. I post you'll see a test stream, showing up in the links, and that's still us trying to figure out. For instance, right now we have a lot of black. so anyway, in the stream, and so we're constantly trying to figure out what those issues are. When it's ready, we're going to roll it out to the rest of the public. There's a team working on graphics, which are doing a great job. JJ comes in and helps set this up. Of course, Liminal has been instrumental in getting this working. So Andy and Jonathan have been building the interface. But it's really an experimentation of what does the next generation of broadcast look like. And I think that this conversational broadcast is part of that next generation of a field of experts, not 5 people all the time on the same thing, but a large number of experts all, trading notes. And this right now we talk about media, but it could be cooking or rocketry or cars or whatever else. This roundtable could be many, many different things. But how do we make that actually relatively scalable and easy to use? And we're still figuring all of that out. As far as what we'll need for folks participating, that will be a constantly moving target. Right now, 920 probably won't keep up in general. I mean, you can probably get away with it for a little while longer. I think a Brio would probably be entry level at some point, because you can definitely see the difference. And there'll be some point in 2022 when we're really going to want everyone on real cameras, to do it, because most of us are now. But we're not going to do that immediately. But I think that the thing that we're really concerned about is good audio, making sure that people sound good and are all relatively the same. So those are the things that keep watching. Feel free to ask questions about what we're doing there. But it's, you'll see like some of the Isadora labs that we're doing, we're kind of trying to figure out a lot of these pieces and kind of work through these sections. And so, it's an interesting puzzle that we're starting to work through. Next question.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia says, is there an affordable and effective mic on a boom for nonprofits doing live streaming? They don't know where or how to properly click on a lavalier and drift away from podium mics.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, it's two issues. You've got a mic and then you've got a boom. And what the mic Sky Gleason is using is extraordinary. It's the MV7. It's an excellent entry-level mic, and it has touch controls. It has a great application, USB or XLR. It's just tons of features. And then as far as the boom goes, I would defer to who was talking about booms yesterday? Somebody had all the answers on boom. So I'll defer to someone else on the boom component of the question.
Go ahead, Bill.
I'd be a little leery of this approach. And the reason I'm saying that is because you can't beat physics. And there's the inverse square principle, and the distance from the mic to whatever's making the sound is always going to have a huge effect on the quality of audio you get. The lavalier's biggest advantage is that it sits maybe 6 inches to 12 inches away from the person's mouth. It is in a fixed position relative to their mouth. It doesn't move around. Most of those things that keep a consistent sound coming out of a lavalier mic kind of go away if you're using a boom. If the boom operator, or if you don't have it on a fixed C-stand or something like that, is going to vary depending on how the operator moves it around, you're also going to get more room noise with any mic that's 3 or 4 feet away over somebody's head than one that is 6 inches away from their mouth on their chest. So it might seem like an overhead boom will solve all your problems. It's going to create some new ones. And I just test it before you say that this is the way we're going to go. Understand the convenience of set it up once and just have people walk under it. But unless everything is fixed position and somebody can listen and know that it's good, you may actually degrade your recording quality.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, you seem to have some problems there, because if they can't figure out how to properly clip on a USB lavalier mic, they're not going to be able to deal with a boom microphone and an interface for it, and positioning it and running cables out of the way. And you could go with a headset mic like the Pile, which we recommend here, but it's also a bit fiddly because you got to put it over your ears, and then you got to find an interface for it because it's not a USB mic. So that's a little bit problematic. So your solutions on a boom would be like the MV7, the USB, a good Shure USB, but you're going to always have to deal with the positioning, especially on the dynamic mics, because they're critical about distance between the person and the microphone. And if they're wandering off of podium mics, they'll be wandering off of a mic on a boom just as easily. So I still think a lavalier would probably be the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I have to try to picture what you have there, what you're trying to shoot. The bottom line is that the thing that I get clearer and clearer the longer I've done this is that the podium construct is kind of bankrupt. So like, the idea that you need to stand up there in front of something and then show a bunch of slides and do all that stuff. So I'm going to kind of back up and just say you probably need to rethink that process, for people, and whether they really need to do it that way. People are very used to it, so they're going to want to keep hanging on to the past, but it is there's better ways to do that. And getting them seated means there's a whole lot of mic options at that point. So it keeps people from moving around. And it's something we did in the before days, and I don't think it really worked then either. I spent most of my time checking my messages. Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania is next, and he says, when you use YouLean meters, the speaker volume is included in the LUFS. If it turns the speakers up, the LUFS go up, but I want to measure before the speakers. How do I route that? And he's wondering if Audio Hijack might help him.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, Loopback and Audio Hijack buy them as a set, and Loopback is really the routing program. One of the first warning messages you get on Loopback is that the pass-through is just a virtual key and everything will pass through it, and then keep those separate. If you make another virtual cable, make it specific to the signal path you want to do. Don't mix the pass-through and the individuals together, because then you get into some complicated situations, unless you're Bill Davis, because he has needs for those complicated situations. Anyways, so yes, you do need Loopback, and you do need to create separate routings for each and every device that you want to pass.
Next question.
Next one comes from Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California. Noah asks, without naming names, what reasons would you not repeat work for a client?
Rupert.
So working with clients it's like a teamwork relationship. It should be collaborative. And sometimes when that doesn't happen, then it just leaves a funny funny taste in your mouth, funny feeling that you just may not want to go through again. So sometimes it's not anything specific, it might just be a general feeling, but something specific might be if a customer or a client has a habit of wanting to cut too many corners to where it's setting a project up for failure rather than success. It just might not be something I want to get into twice.
Go ahead, Jason.
I'm going to not restate what Rupert said because it's an excellent point. Keep in mind, I've done this maybe a dozen years and have thousands of clients. I can count on one hand easily the number of times I've ever had to fire a client, but it does happen. And I would say largest single determinant is if they selectively remember, ignore things that they've agreed to, and then try to blame me for the things that they are both not remembering and ignoring.
Go ahead, Charles.
I would second everything that Jason and Rupert said. I would also add, if a client is disrespectful to the people that are, let's say, under them. For example, I've been on projects where I'm the senior person or the art director, and I have a few junior people working under me. And if the client is disrespectful to those individuals on the team, then we have a fundamental difference in how we interact. So I will probably not work with that client again.
Yeah, I think that I probably have a few reasons that I've gotten rid of clients. And so, I mean, the one that is the no-go is hiring my crew. So like that is because then I just don't feel safe. We've had a couple of clients that want to hire like people who work for me. They'll hire them away from me. Now, some of them have approached me and said, hey, we're really interested in this person. And we work out a deal and I don't get anything out of it, but we work out timing for that to happen. I don't ever want to stop someone from being successful, but someone who doesn't come to talk to me and just steals my employees, that's just not a safe place for me to be. Like I can't, because mostly I work with, Fortune 10. And so if they, or Fortune 100 at least. And so I can't compete with them in that area. And so if they're going to start doing that, then I usually have to, I've had to cut off a couple clients for that because I train our crew pretty tightly. so it's hard for me to replace them too. And so anyway, so that's probably the number one. The one that doesn't really get people, definitely getting thrown under the bus will have me like not as interested. And also people harangue me over budget. Like I work pretty hard on my budgets of how to make it work and make sure that they're fair and make sure that we can actually do it. And if I spend a week going back and forth over budgets, it's not that I'll fire the client, but I'm definitely looking for other options. And there's some clients that have that part of their culture is that they're going to harangue you over every little line item and everything else. And I am constantly looking for clients that don't do that. I find that over time you can find them, and that are going to look at it I don't fire clients over that. And sometimes I just kind of know that that's the nature of every show is going to go, but it definitely is tiring, they don't get the clients that have just said, just tell me what the number is. We just do a lot more work for them. Like we're thinking about it all the time. Like, how do we do more work for that? Like, that's the thing that clients miss is that a company that says, for a long time with some of the companies we worked with, we just give them a number and they'd say, fine, go do that. And we thought about them all day. Like when we weren't working for them, like how do we get ready for the next thing and how do we build that up and how do we do this stuff? Because it was just so much fun to work on those projects. And the clients that harangue us over it, we would, just wait until they show up and then give them exactly what they paid for, but it wasn't an expression of something that we love to do. And I think clients miss how much value they lose by their accounting firm getting in there and their accounting department and just twisting everybody like that's their job. And it's just it's probably the biggest mistake that corporations make is that they nickel and dime their employees, they nickel and dime everybody around them. And they just forget that there's a whole subjective part of this that you get what you pay for, but you don't get any more when you do that weird little thing that a lot of corporations do. Next question.
Next one comes from Rupert McRae here on the panel. And Rupert asks out of Dallas, Texas, is there any thoughts or experiences with the brand Angry audio equipment?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Anybody that's worked as an engineer in radio has had to MacGyver some kind of a crazy setup to make something work right. And Michael Dosh at Angry Audio created it. He's not really an angry guy. In fact, you can call his phone number at angryaudio.com. You can talk to him personally. Makes a collection of very unique and thoughtful gadgets that fix problems. And that's a great company concept to have. For example, I had a situation where I used an old audio hybrid for telephone calls, and my landline's gone. How do I do that with my cell phone? Well, he makes a gadget that links up Bluetooth and provides a mix minus back down the phone line, and it just solves a lot of problems. One little box, plug it in, boom, it works great. And he has a lot of other devices like that. So I highly recommend them. They're reasonably priced, and they solve problems that you never thought you had until you see it.
It's a really cool website. We need to get him on. Like, that would be really fun for him to talk about how he got into this model.
I am digging this. Oh.
Yeah, really, really cool. Go ahead, Roscoe.
These are the little companies you really want to stay in existence, because you may not need them today, but you will need them someday. And when you do, they are wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
We're slipping down to Australia for Peter Moore, who's been on the panel before a long time ago. I've had a couple of Behringer mixers. I bought a new one during the COVID-19 lockdown last year. The X32 is mentioned a lot here, and how you guys are rack mounting them. Is there a different rack mount unit? If not, how do you access the controls?
Go ahead, John.
Hey, Peter. Yeah, I don't know, is there 4 or 5 different models of the X32? I have the rack, the X32R, and note that it doesn't come with Dante, but then there's a couple different ways to access the controls. This is X32 Edit, and then I guess there's some really good apps that run on the iPad as well to control it. So if you get one, make sure you add the Dante card in. It's another $400 or so, but it's a great unit.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
I bought the X32 and it was DOA within 12 hours, and that was that. I thought, nope, not a chance. To answer your question, there is not another rack-mounted unit for the X32, but you can, pretty much rack mount any mixer. The problem is most of the other ones are wider than your standard 19.5 inch, so you're going to end up getting creative. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, there was a round of the X32s that had a bad power supply. So once, that was the issue, that the power supply needed to be replaced. We had one of those as well. The X32, though, X Touch is a great hardware interface that you can use to control it. And then, of course, I have one right here. So a lot of us have these X32s. I think there's also a Yamaha has the TF series. I think there is a rack mountable, but I don't think it's I don't think price per performance is as good as the X32. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Scott Clute in Columbus, Ohio. And Scott asks, looking for an audio interface to take in an analog microphone that can be controlled via Bitfocus Companion. He wants to mute the mic on a system-wide level, and bonus points if it gives status feedback to Companion.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Scott, I'm probably pretty much in the same boat as you. I can tell you more what not to use as I can what can you use. For example, if you're trying to use ultimately Stream Deck with your Companion to mute the mic on and off for like a Zoom call, there's a bounce in that key when you hit it, and you just can't depend on it, particularly in a Zoom call where it has to be perfect. It just doesn't work. I also used a device called a Mute Me. It's a little puck-shaped device that lights up to tell you where you are. Again, keyboard bounce on it caused me problems. Alex is using the next thing I'm probably going to try. It's the Studio Technologies 205, which has a nice switch on the front of it, but it does not talk to Companion. It's just a button that you hit, and it works time and time again. I'm sure Alex would tell you.
Yeah, it works. Here's the funny thing is it works about as often as the it works about as often as the Stream Deck. So I will say that it's not 100%. But what happens is that the what it shows you is I just find myself double tapping it, but with the Stream Deck, you don't know whether you tapped it or not. With this, see if we cut to this here. So this is the little studio. This is what I use, and so if I push, you can hear that you couldn't hear me. Also, if I push, so these are talk. If I have comms and I want to talk back to someone, if I push this down to talk to another channel in Unity or whatever, so it automatically cuts out my mic to the main feed, and so that's kind of how I use that. Sometimes I can tap it and it doesn't jump immediately. it's okay. I've learned how to tap it in the right place, and it's a lot easier for me to figure out that than the Stream Deck. The other thing that it has on the back of it, which is hard for me to show you in this configuration, is it's got a little 1/8 inch jack that you can use for closure, so as a closure. And so what I'm actually looking at doing, I know this will sound crazy, is building a switch that's like literally like this big old switch that switches back and forth, that runs into that closure, so that I can, I'll still use this box, but I really kind of want something that's right next to right next to something that I can push down. I've even thought about having one that I can hold down. So there's a couple different things I'm looking at in that area, but it's still the best box I've gotten, for what we're doing.
So like a sustain pedal for your desk, essentially, that kind of interrupt that's just a flip
switch?
Well,
I've been looking at that, but I've also been looking at just literally a toggle, like just switch up and I'm live, switch back and I'm off, kind of things that's even more than this does. But this has tons of routing. The big thing with the Studio Technology is you can decide what all the behaviors are for all the buttons. Is it momentary? Is it close? Is it open? Is it, what does it do? All those things can be defined inside the box, which is pretty powerful. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, in this case, Douglas asks, how would you store configuration data in Isadora? Wouldn't you need a JavaScript actor, he wonders.
I think JJ could. We're doing that, and I do believe that it's a JavaScript actor that we're using inside of Isadora to make that work. So, we learned we don't want to have our system need to have any configuration. So all of our atem routers, everything, all of that's getting pushed into Isadora. So Isadora will hold all that information. When it turns on, it just tells everything what it needs to be. Of what we're going to, and so that's kind of our new approach. Next question.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California, here on the panel says, "Are you planning on starting any projects over the holidays?"
Go ahead, John.
Q Courtney with the reverb. We call this O space, and there's about 10 or so people from Office Hours coming to Vegas March 19th. It's going to be a fun project. We look forward to it. Things are moving along nicely.
Go ahead, Rupert.
Interesting question about starting projects. I certainly have a few to finish. I'd like to get this shelving finished behind my desk, but that's tied up with supply chain problems.
Go ahead, Jason.
I always feel like I'm like need to break out of groupthink with this group of people, because get out of my head. My first thing that I was thinking was, oh man, it's the completion that kills me. But then again, you guys are smart people, so I suppose that's okay. I'm going to be working on the load-in for my studio move, and I just got a big, nice 4K monitor that does that quad link 1080p thing that is going to be very nice.
Go ahead, Charles.
It's more like continuing projects. I just ordered another slimmer butcher block and ordered some legs for it from the same guy in Poland. I'm going to make a bench to match my desk. That's the main hardware thing. After that is just more technical graphic stuff.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm finally going to decide what teleprompter I want and install it, because I've been waiting a long time to do it right.
And you guys are all in my project, so we're going to just keep on working on designing my studio. Every time I design it more, I'm always, So one of the things this week I'm working on is the desk. So we'll have a version of the desk up for you all to look at next week, and then we'll see where we go from there. Next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle, oops, that shifted, says, talent and crew. As a podcaster, how many people do everything to make a show? How is Office Hours developing both talent and crew, not being the same person?
All right, go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, well, we are all talented in the sense that we have a technical background, but talent traditionally doesn't worry about all the things behind the scenes. So I don't know that we're going to continue to divide in that sense. I think we're all just learning together. And I think at the end of the day, and this is my point, I guess, dedication, I can train somebody how to do something if they're dedicated to the project. I'd rather have a dedicated person that I can train than have a super talented person who's not really into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sky?
Well, as an actor, I was either learning my lines to be able to do the performance, but I didn't have to worry about the light other than making sure I was in it. The behind the scenes, of course, you've got a whole crew and a whole skill set. And the comment was there are no small parts they're only small actors. And so the universality of everybody needs to be a part of moving the story forward. And that's where I'm realizing we are starting to get people that are on camera, and there are people that are behind the scenes doing and pushing buttons. So I just wanted to encourage, but also have a conversation about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I hear these conversations every day. This morning in after hours, which is really before hours, I heard someone say, "Oh, I'll help you do this and this," and it was a producer talking to a podcaster, and they were working together. And I think office hours is an incredible incubator, and I look forward to seeing all the shows that are going to emanate out of office hours.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as we keep on growing, as we keep on doing more and more of these shows, we're going to keep on building up more and more talent of people who know different parts of this. And I would definitely recommend, as you see opportunities come by with office hours, is to jump on them and jump on different ones and try them out and keep on trying to figure those out, because I think that some people will become producers because of that, because they will have done all these different things and they know how to talk to it. It's important to, even if you don't think you're going to ever do those all the time, doing them for some of the time. This is one of the few places you get to do that without a lot of upset, of you learning. So it's a great place to learn. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Brant Kruger, and Brant says from Minneapolis, Minnesota, for home studios, what are people using to control playback, presentation, or telestrator machines? KVM switches, separate keyboards, trackpads?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Well, for me, the presentations I do almost always center around Keynote, so it's just a process of taking the atem mini and popping into a presentation thing. And the Keynote has continued to develop so that you can play back video in it and a whole bunch of other things pretty reliably. So that's my go-to.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
If I understand the question correctly, what are you using sort of at the center of the system that's allowing you to control these devices? In my case, the ubiquitous atem Mini Extreme. In my case, you can get a Mini and save a few bucks, but that's the center of my my switching empire.
Go ahead, Charles.
I have my Zoom machine that's just doing Zoom now, and then everything else is on a separate machine, especially if I'm doing client work. My main machine is not connected to the internet, but it's connected to HDMI to the atem, so I can stream that out if the client wants to do something quick and just see what I'm doing.
Courtney.
I always like to use, since we're using an atem switcher for switching, for doing playback, I'll use a playout, my own playout software on the playout, it's running there on the input 4. Or I'll use a stick PC as a separate source for video, or you can use a playout B running on a Raspberry Pi. And then I have a separate little mini keyboard here that you can see that has an optical mouse. You stick your thumb over there on the right side, and it has a full QWERTY keyboard, and it's wireless, and that's plugged into the playout computer so that I can control it separately from my main computer so I don't get things confused and click on the wrong things.
Yeah, and mine's a mixture of course, that Studio Technologies that I just showed, a KVM to get to different computers, my atem to manage that, and pretty much any operation has its own machine for me. I don't have one machine doing a bunch of things. I have a Mac Mini typically that's doing a different thing for each thing, so that I don't have to. So it's easy for me to kind of jump from one thing to the next, and things stay in the state that I want to keep them in. So next question.
Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia, here on the panel. Our friend says, is there a reason that YouTube seems very blurry today? And he notes he's watching it on an iPad.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
I checked in, didn't look blurry to me, so could be bandwidth, I guess. I'm not.
Yeah, I haven't been able to look. I know that I've been looking at the other one. So go ahead, Sky.
I'm also watching it on YouTube on my same laptop. It seems to be clear here.
Yep. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, it may be the iPad is on Wi-Fi 6, so maybe that's what the problem is. But yeah. It does not look good on my end.
If it senses that it's having a bad connection, it's going to lower your resolution. So that possibly could be the issue. Go ahead, Noah.
That was kind of what I was going to ask about is like, do you see what resolution it's currently streaming at? Because it automatically will scale down depending on what it sees as your connection.
Next question.
David Brady in New York City is up next. I have several meeting and webinar templates saved in my Zoom account. Is there any way to save and deploy those to the entire enterprise?
Go ahead, Rupert.
Actually, I don't think there is a way. I've checked my portal on the enterprise account and I've checked the documentation. There's certainly nothing obvious or nothing listed. It seems like it would be a worthwhile feature though. So I'm wondering whether it's one of those things we may see creep into a future update. But if you're looking to do it as a one-time exercise, I suspect that's something that Zoom support could help you with. So it'd be worth asking them. And if it's a feature you really want, try the Zoom feedback feature suggestion form.
Next question.
Comes to us from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware, in the panel who was just speaking. Question for Alex. If I'm using the Studio Technologies 205 in analog mode, how can I power it without power over Ethernet?
You do need to have power over Ethernet. so you have to give it, you're going to have to put an injector. It's designed to work with power over Ethernet. So I don't know of any other way to plug it in. So it's just the Ethernet just becomes the plug. Next question.
Next one's from Junior Grant, no city given. There will be several mentions of audio issues with the ATEM Mini, or there have been, I guess, here in the show. What do you do when you can't route audio from a mixer to your camera?
Go ahead, real quick, Courtney.
I just route audio from my mixer to a USB input and select that in Zoom. You don't have to select the audio from the ATEM to be your audio on Zoom. So select a separate picture.
Go ahead, Noah, real quick.
Problems we've mentioned were with the preamps.
Yeah, so you just want to find a way around those. But yeah, going through the camera. Next question.
Our last one this morning is Andy Dolph, says from Durham, New Hampshire. I'm trying to figure out how to attach a Neewer video light, roughly a 6x8 panel, to the top of a monitor stand. The stand is a vertical pipe, approximately 1 3/4 inches in diameter. I know there are clamps, but not sure what I should look for. Thanks.
Go ahead, Charles.
All you need is one of these. Matthews Mathellini clamp. If you buy one, you're going to end up buying 4 or 5 of them. They're indestructible. You're only going to buy them once. They will last you a lifetime.
And the original ones that Matthews stole that from is the Cardellini. so you can get the Matthews Lini, but the patent ran out and they're calling it their own thing now, so they can make more money. But the Cardellini, the guy who makes those is up here in Northern California that I met. So anyway, I just want to make sure you know that there's a couple of different versions. That Mayfair is also another thing that you could use, which I don't have right in my arm's reach, but you could also use that as well. Okay. We are changing subjects. We're really excited to have John Barker back from Here2Record. Hey, John.
Hello. Thanks for having me back on again. It's fun.
Yeah, good to have you back on. And you've got some new product. You've got at least some updates, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, quite the rewrite of my previous sort of the first project that I really worked on in terms of development was a graphics-based project. I needed it for a gig about 3 years ago now, maybe. And instead of trying to look around for solutions, I just made something myself because I knew it only needed a few features. And then when I was done with that one gig, I ended up deciding it may as well be an application for other people to use. And time just goes on and you add loads of features, and technical debt is quite the term to describe that kind of thing.
I love that word. I was in a meeting at some point and someone said, well, that application has a lot of technical debt. And I had never heard that before. And I was like, oh, that is such a great term to describe like when you've coded your way into a corner and there's nowhere really to go.
Yeah, before I did coding, I used to do some UX stuff and work with developers, and they would use that term a lot. And I always think like, how do you get yourself in that position? And here we are years later. Yeah. But anyway, I've learned a lot in that process. And I wanted to rewrite the application, the graphics application. And I thought it would be a few month, trip. In fact, just to Noah's question earlier, what kind of projects are you going to work on this winter season? Last winter season, about this date, I started rewriting the project, thinking that I'd be kind of done by, January, February. And that turned into me quitting my job in May and maybe being done by June, July. And now we are start of December. But it's been worth it in a much better place because it's been through like months of testing instead of weeks of testing. So it's
And,
always
and what have you? So this is here to record graphics, right? This is that's what you're
exactly. So I guess I'll just show you the site real quickly. If it's all right if I just show it through here.
Absolutely.
But so the idea, H2R Graphics, it's downloadable application that lets you show graphics on your live streams. I have the site here and I can shoot the link over there so you can take a look at it. But better if we just browse the app itself. So anyone familiar with the old version will know that this is quite different, and it's all been redesigned and sort of rewritten. But the idea being that it's sort of multi-window application and everything's web-based now as well. So in this project here, I can open up either a control window in my browser because it's just a link. I could open that on any device on the network actually, but I'll just stick to this device for now. And this project lets me do all of the graphics. So one of the main reasons that I redesigned this was because I started getting back into live streaming myself again, and I was using my own software. And within 1 or 2 streams, I realized that I had not done a great job in terms of UX. So whenever you're running a show and also running graphics at the same time. So everything was tab based, and you had to kind of look around, you know that feeling of, I'm just going to end the show. Let me just find the link here. Okay, I'll click that. So what I did with this new version here was make it more of like a linear build your show style interface. So in this case, I can go into edit mode and add some new graphics to my production, things like lower thirds and messages, time, images, and all that stuff. And then from there, in fact, if I just go back over to the other launcher window, you open up an output. But in my case today, I'm using vMix for this production. So I can actually just open this link up inside of vMix, and the background, since it's all web-based technically.
And it's delivering an HTML5 with alpha to vMix. Is that how that works?
Exactly. Yeah, and the background is just set to transparent on that output, so you don't have to do any keying. It's all just kind of done in vMix or OBS. Used to be did everything with atems and keying stuff out, but now it's just so much easier for live streams here at home just to throw it into vMix or into OBS or something, and it works quite nicely. And then from there, I can, I think I have my graphics still on my stream right now. But if I, so if I just click on any of these graphics here, they go on and off air. Or if I want to show a few at the same time, I can like queue them up and then run them and let them all show at the same time. And do the same in the opposite direction, run them and turn them off. So from here, really my logical thinking is like you build your show in sort of chronological order as best you can. You can still be nimble along the way, but really the idea is be as prepared as possible, unlike the old version, which was just like discovered on the fly,
Right. Well, and does that, when you say you build your show, but you don't copy necessarily the same things over, like, oh, I want time of day. Like sometimes when we do run of shows, we put those buttons back in, put things back in, like, oh, I'm just going to keep going down the list. But in this case, you just put up all the things that you may want to use.
Yeah, exactly. That's the idea. All the things you want to use, and sorry, you can put them technically in the order that you want to use them as well by just dragging them around.
That's great.
So in general, if you start with, let's just say, I'm going to start my show with an image. There's a good chance I want that at the top of the rundown so that I can show that first, and I could throw in a few versions of that, but really I just leave it there at the start of the show and I can click on it. So it is sort of organizational focused, and you can go from there.
Right. That's great. And then you would have with the lower third, you'd have multiple lower thirds going into that rundown of, I can just click on that person and just give just knock it out. But most of the time,
but there's a couple of ways to do that now, actually. So the old one was exactly that. I would create a lower third for each person, but in this case, what I've done, and I'll just jump ahead a little bit to this variables tab. This is something I've wanted for the longest time. So in here, I can just create a huge document with all of the names of people and their companies and stuff. And then what I have is these little, this one just says list 1.1, list 1.2. And when I click between them, they become the variable. So over on the rundown again, if I show this, in fact, if I just go in and edit this one, you can see that list 1.1 is actually what's in the content section of that graphic.
Right.
And in fact, if I show that graphic, which you can see now, I guess, and go back into my variables, then I can just jump between what that should be. I find this to be one of the main workflows that I do, because a lot of the time I actually end up using like an atem and the downstream keyer to actually bring on and off the graphics, really. So it's quite nice just to punch through, check on your multi-view, and then show the graphic whenever you want to show it.
Right.
That's sort of the workflow that I'm personally pushing towards. And again, like I think I said that last time, but build the tool that I want, and then hopefully people will help me make it a little bit better or more better over time. And plenty of people have weighed in with lots of thoughts, and it has definitely evolved to get to this point where it is right now.
Which is why it takes so long, because you just keep on going, oh, that's something we have to release. We can't release until we have that. That's the danger of.
Yeah, there's a long stack of features that I just had to say I need to not add this just yet, but it's still on the list. Don't worry.
Right, absolutely. Anything else you want to show before we open to questions?
Yeah, actually, one other thing, which was because I asked some people just before the show started just to head over to YouTube and comment on a fake like sort of test live stream that I set up. So back over on the app, I do have this social tab here, which pulls in all the comments from that YouTube stream that I set up. And from here, I can show any of those on my live stream as well. But one of the things I really wanted to get right for this version was like a process where other people can help you run your stream as well. So for example, I can list some of these social chat messages that have all been pulled in from YouTube. And then if I just cut back to me and over on my iPad, because it's like I said, it's all network based, I can see those same chat messages over here. And then you could give this to a person who's just there to list things, or you could give this to a person and only show certain things,
right,
and they can actually fire off the graphics and show them from there. So it's kind of like about some control and sort of spreading the tasks between some people. And I know like Jonas did a very early test on one of his live streams, and it went all right, and we've learned a lot since then as well. Right. But that's I guess one of the other features, and anything else that pops in. Oh, and I wanted to say if there's any questions about other apps that I showed in the past as well, feel free to throw those questions in as well.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions, Bill.
Absolutely. In fact, the first three of them came from Jonas in Stuttgart, Germany, and he says, can you talk about your animated super sources as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We can take a little detour. So last time I showed off H2R layouts, which was, I think, like pretty much a brand new tool whenever I was on here last time. But basically, it lets you create super source layouts for your atem. And a lot has changed since then on this tool. So that the core functionality still exists there. But I think it was George maybe, or Chirag, one of the two, or maybe both of them. Actually, it was Chirag. He said, you could do this for vMix as well. So what you can do now is do up to 9 vMix boxes as well in here, and just export that into vMix, and it all just builds your scene. But one of the things I added really recently was animated super source layout. So you have a ton of options down here now. And for this animated version, it's a lot more complicated than the previous, sort of simple app, as these things tend to go. But what it does is it's sort of in between my older version, which was one super source layout, no animations, and then it sits way far away, but somewhere in between what Adam's doing with Mix Effect, which is, you can go any super source to any super source. What I wanted to do, and what I tend to do for lots of my gigs, is we have one super source layout, and then I want like a single of each of those people to come in and out. So what this does is it generates that one final super source look, and then it gives you some companion buttons to go in and out of that look. So maybe you don't change your super source layout very often, and it's just an easy way to get rolling with that. And you can go over to the website and just create that now, download it, bring it into the atem, and then punch through the looks.
Next question.
Next one comes to us again from Jonas, and Jonas says, can you do a multi-language, different branding versions of the same lower third?
You can actually, and that's one of the things I never mentioned. I'm such a bad salesperson that H2R Graphics before was free, and it still is free. Everything I showed you just now is all in the free version, but there is a pro unlock as well. So if I take a look back on the, let me just bring it up here. On the screen here, the free version has this one output window, which is what I showed you earlier there. But if I just cut over to my other computer, where's that at? There it is. So I'm running the Pro version on my Mac right now. And what it lets you do is do up to 4 outputs. And with those 4 outputs in mind, you can actually decide which of the outputs your graphics are going to be on. So you could go on all 4 of them or just one of them. And what that lets you do is you can create a couple of lower thirds, for example, send them to 2 different outputs, and then put different data in each one, fire them off at the same time. And you could overlay those 2 outputs on different versions of the live stream, and then send off some multilingual sort of lower thirds or any of the messages you see there. So that's one of the ways I would try and do that.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to get to a point. This is what happens when you start showing people things. They have suggestions, but being able to somehow link, like, so with a lower third in that database, in that list, that X list that you had before, link certain lower thirds to each other between lower thirds, like draw a line between them, so that if I change to this one, it automatically changes that all the other ones to what they need to be. Otherwise it turns into a thing.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I've just been working on. One of the biggest feature requests in the past were, what if I wanted to do my own custom like PNG in the background of a lower third? And that is now possible by stacking 2 graphics together and doing some theming. But the next step from that is like grouping things together. And I think that would work nicely in what you said as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
And the final question from Jonas is, what is your favorite new feature in the H2R Graphics GFX?
That is a good question to ask me. It's hard to exactly sum it down, but one of the things I really wanted to add for the longest time in the previous version of H2R Graphics was a little bit. So the graphics you saw so far were just sort of a block moving in and out. And I think my whole motto behind the previous version was sort of like your first graphics application. This is the first thing you want to use, get you going, get you started. But I felt like the next level from that would be a little bit more dynamic, nothing too crazy, but graphics that were just a little more interesting. So over on the Pro version here on my laptop, I have these new animated style graphics. So I think if I turn this on here, so I have these countdown timers that are a little bit more, fancy than the old version. So for example, this one is like a mask style countdown timer that you can set to a certain length, and then you can make it nice and big. I call it the big timer on the screen. That one, I have a line version, and then this circle version, one of these kind of classic big timers that you can use during your streams. So I think it goes back to the chat we had at the start about technical debt. I kind of developed myself into a corner before, but now having the few years of knowledge on the tool and what people might expect from it and what I expect from it means that I could start from a better place and then relatively easily add these sorts of things. Whereas before in the old version, I have no idea how much work it would have been to add something like that.
Yeah, the hardest part is as you add all these features, those become that architecture becomes more and more important, as you go down that path. When I started writing code when I was a kid, I learned to do it 3 times. So I would do one where I just started writing, just write, just make it do the thing. Then I'd throw all that away. I wouldn't keep a single line of code because if I did, it would tie me to the ground. So then I try to build it based on what I knew there, and then I'd throw it away, and then I'd write. And then I'd build flow documents and then build out my app. And the problem is that those were all simple little apps that I built. And I was talking to an engineer, and they're like, "Yeah, but what happens when you add something that's got 1,000 lines of code? You can't just throw that away. You need to figure out how you're going to incorporate it." What's the architecture that you're using to write this?
It's all based on like Node. React is what's running the front end stuff, and then it's bundled with Electron to let it run on Mac and on Windows. And I know Electron gets a little bit of back and forth about its sort of bloat sometimes, but it really is, for me as a one-person developer, it's really either I have to say to people, you have to get a Mac because I'm only Mac, or PC because I'm only PC. It really gets me in that nice position right between the two. And I also, all of my other apps are written in React as well. So being able to bring all that knowledge into this. There's no
Right.
way it would have taken me another 2 years if I was learning something else, you know. So it's a constant back and forth, but I'm feeling pretty good about where it's at right now.
Next question.
Next one comes from Mark Horner in Seattle, Washington. And Mark asks, if I understand correctly, the new version of H2R Graphics is not yet fully compatible with Bitfocus Companion. Could John please clarify? And this says thanks.
Exactly. So this is one of those things, actually, to your point, Alex, earlier, about laying the concrete, which is a good way of putting it. I think I wanted to not delve too deeply into the companion official module until I was pretty sure about how the API would work for me. And I wanted to be able to make some changes up until that point. So technically, you can use Companion already because Companion has a generic HTTP module. And I've documented all of the current public HTTP requests that you can use. So technically you can use it, but it is a bit more manual than I would want it to be for the average user. And the average user might be happy to know that today I was downloading Companion and trying to rebuild this module. One of the issues right now is that because I have the V1 application, which is written quite differently in terms of the API, and this V2, which is written differently, I'm just trying to get some help from the community in Companion to see the best way to support both of those at the same time without breaking it for the V1 people and making it work well for V2. So it is like it's a consideration at the minute.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Todd Rains in Allen, Texas. And Todd says, John, to use H2R Graphics on a Windows machine with an atem, do you need to make the output full screen? Does this require a dedicated monitor?
So to use it on Windows with an atem, you would not need an extra monitor, but you would need an extra HDMI output or something like that, because you'll want to connect your extended display into the atem. And then you can see on the atem's multi-view, you can see what you're sending out over that extended display. So while you won't need a specific monitor, you can do this with a Windows computer and then just make that full screen. If you want to do sort of Luma or maybe chroma key style thing, that's a good option. And the way I'm sort of pushing people in the other direction is key fill style. If you can swing that, then I would go for something like an Ultra Studio HD Mini or something along those lines. I'm running OBS in testing right now with an Ultra Studio, which gets you really nice key fill as well, which is the best results that I've found, obviously, instead of chroma keying in the atem.
Next question
comes from Alex Gollner in London. And Alex says, could you show us how to design lower third templates, please?
Absolutely. That is something I jumped over as well. So this is one of those really difficult V2 things. And Jonas, who unfortunately is just watching along, I would love to have him here so I could thank him, but he's one of those early testers that really helped me build this theme experience. So I wanted it to be as themable as possible without giving too many little handles and movers and stuff. So I built this theme editor, I'm calling it. And in there, you get a preview of what your theme looks like. So all the graphics I've shown right now look like this orange style. In fact, let me just throw a graphic on screen. This one. Yeah, so my default theme for this project is this H2R orange one, but I can create as many themes as I want in here, and then from there make that the default, and that becomes, it would change all the graphics on the screen to look like that. You can, of course, just set certain graphics to certain themes and stuff for certain use cases, but really the idea is being able to jump between shows pretty fast and make all these themes in here. So from there, you have lots of options within this theme, like what size you want text to be, line height, if you want to be bold. I'll just make sure you can see all of that. Yeah, you can, good. So everything's sort of made up of really two components, large text, small text. You can change the background color, the rounding, and if you want there to be a border on there or not. I've kind of designed little bits and pieces to make all of this what I would consider to be as usable as I can make it, while still giving you plenty of options And then in the future, I want to unlock more like CSS things because it's all based basically on CSS. I want to unlock those kind of things in the future, but for now, you can get pretty far with a theme builder.
Next question.
Mitchell Hill is up next, and he asked, do you have plans to use decklink and alpha channels?
Yeah, so another one of the biggest questions about between this or the old version and this version is that the old version technically had a key fill option built into it, which was my kind of, if you looked really closely, it was a very hacked together solution, which was just taking everything that was shown and making it white in and output. Now it worked pretty well, but there were some cases where you started to see where it was breaking apart. What I really recommend for this new version, like I mentioned before, was that if you use something like OBS, it has a really nice built-in the ability to just open up a decklink output. And in my case here, I have Ultra Studio connected. You can just about see that there. And I can just start that, throw in the browser link in here with a transparent background, and then that will generate, that will generate a really nice key fill solution. So it is possible. I have thought about adding it into the official app H2R Graphics as well, but it's a lot of development testing time that I haven't quite gotten to yet. And I would be very keen to do it, but I just know if you run something like OBS or vMix, then you already have that ready to go right now. So it is an option.
And would it just be a matter of working with Siphon and Black Siphon to get it to be able to target the outputs from the decklink?
There are a few ways to do it at this point. I think there is actually a module that you can just pull in and do that, but I haven't really dug into the Siphon way of doing it either. So there are a few avenues, but I haven't tried that one.
Yeah, because I know that what we're doing with Office Hours 2.0 is a mixture of for what, because we're getting a lot. We're using 4 decklink outputs, from each Mac Mini, and that's a mixture of that's using Black Siphon, which allows us to it just hands us what we need to identify what's going out where. So it seems like that would be the solution, but I don't know.
SDI scan converter can also do it.
Yeah, that was one of those things I recommended for the longest time, definitely. I would love it to be much more integrated, but as soon as I go down one of those paths, I feel like I'm spending weeks on that instead of building the, 150 other little small features that I really want to get in there and then eventually get to that.
I have to admit, as a production person, though, I don't look at putting a piece of software that's just going to handle key fill on the way out in the middle of what I'm doing just is a variable that I won't, like, I know that for me, I won't add it. Like, I know that Black Siphon is just another piece of software, but that is what we, I wouldn't add OBS or vMix into the middle of some, well, vMix wouldn't work for me because I don't really use PCs that much in my production pipeline. And then OBS on a Mac isn't stable enough to consider an option, in my opinion. Next question.
Next one comes from Georgie Kennedy, normally one of our panelists here, and he says, John, will we be able to add other data sources besides YouTube? Would would it be possible, I guess, to pull data from Google Sheets?
I definitely plan on adding some more options in there for sure. For the longest time, I've wanted to add other things like Restream or Twitch as a way of pulling in live chat. Funny enough, Google Sheets was in the previous version, but they changed the API recently, and it requires a lot of authentication that wasn't there before. So I'm sort of trying to avoid that as much as I can. But certainly, I have plans to do lots of things, like that. And then Jonas, who shared a little while ago, that there's a way to pull in data from Zoom OSC as well through a little app that he built and bounce that into the variable list view that I showed before. So there are some things already possible, and then it's on the list as well to add.
Have you had any challenges with YouTube's API as far as grabbing?
Definitely, yeah. I think we did.
Not that I've had these challenges. It's a token issue, isn't it?
It is a huge problem. In fact,
oh my gosh,
there's a guide. Whenever you sign up if you want to do any sort of YouTube stuff on the current version of H2R Graphics, the old one and the current one, I can show you this page because it's blurred out here, but you do have to follow a little process to get a YouTube API key yourself. It doesn't take long, but it's not like the easiest process. And that's because I personally have a limit as well. And I've got that limit increased, and it's still only enough to like support about 10 people. I need to get it increased more than I can even imagine. And there's no good workflow for that. So everyone gets their own API key basically, and then you're set.
Oh, it's such a, so Facebook's harder because it's constantly changing. Like the rules of how it works and everything else becomes this just constant update problem. I mean, it's like literally it can be every couple weeks. You just have a new set of rules that you didn't know that you had, and they don't really tell you and everything else. And then, but YouTube, this API key problem is just bedeviling. It makes it almost impossible to do anything at scale. Like it's one thing to do smaller shows, but like we find that if we have, if we're going to get 10,000 interactions, it's just like, it's a thing. Next question.
Alex Goldner in London comes up next. He says, Safari can do wide color gamut colors. Chrome will in coming months. How does H2R Graphics account for the evolution in CSS?
It's a very good question. So in general, I do try to avoid Safari as a output device for H2R Graphics. And because of the way I build it on Electron, which is basically just Chrome under the hood, then whenever you open the window natively in the app, it's just opening a Chrome window. Or if you open it on your own browser, ideally that would be Chrome as well, because then I know what I'm in for. Safari, a lot of the stuff works, but some stuff has interesting results. The evolution of CSS, pretty slow is how I would approach that, definitely. I'm keen not to get too far ahead of where things are, but what's quite nice about Electron in general is that you get Chrome bundled as part of the app. Going back to what I said earlier, that's part of, or Chromium, that's part of the bloat issues really. But what it means is you get a version that will show all of the CSS features that you know exist. So I don't want to move too fast into some fancy features as much as that would be quite nice.
Next question.
Todd Rains in Allen, Texas is next. He says, can you show how to mix themes, say for different brands on the same show?
Yeah, certainly. So if I head back over to this project that I had here, whenever you're editing a graphic, you can choose a few different things. In fact, if I just show that on the screen there, you can choose the content of it. You can also choose the positioning of it, which I never showed before as well. But in here, by default, it will use the main theme that you set, the default theme of the project. But in here, I can actually just override that with another theme if I prefer that. So in general, you could create as many lower thirds as you wanted and as many themes as you wanted and just set them all to override in here. What I find that useful for, among other things, is that you could have a theme that has no background and you want to put a piece of text on screen and not make it look so much like a overlay graphic, but just a little bit more subtle. So that's the kind of thing I tend to use that for, is I have a theme that's like the no back theme or the transparent back theme, and then I use it for that.
Next question.
Alex Goldner back from London, and he asks, tell us about Here2Record H2Graphics and HDR streamed events.
I have yet to go down the rabbit hole of HDR streamed events. So I am keen to hear if anyone else is willing to play and test it out, and I'm happy to sit in and watch how that goes.
Yeah, we can play with that. I think that's something that we could probably play with. So we'll get our team looking at it and just seeing what it looks like. I mean, for the most part with graphics, what we're finding is that even 709 graphics work pretty well because they don't have a lot of gradients. So your graphics will probably just amplify pretty well. We may have to have some controls. One of the things we worry about is really bright white. So things that were white, should be a little lower, that type of thing. But for the most part, 709 graphics just bump up really nicely. It's when you start getting to soft gradients and lots of detail in the graphics is where we really want to be able to have it sent to us in a PQ curve or into an HLG curve so that we have more data there to grab onto, and then that also is where we want to see 10-bit, so, and we're learning a lot about that because Office Hours 2.0 is sitting inside of HDR, watching what Tuomo is doing, with his graphics, we're getting to see, oh, that works, this doesn't work, that works, this doesn't work, that type of thing. Next question.
Ike Potter in Hanover, Germany up next. He says, John, are there plans to expand H2R Graphics more in sports sections? For example, displaying results tables, scoring tables of races, soccer tournaments, and so on.
There definitely are good plans, but sport is one of those things. It's just an absolute rabbit hole of information and options and flags and timers and checkboxes. It is, I've walked into it and then I've quickly walked out of that room again. It's scary.
Yeah, I will commiserate with you for just a second to say that it's a briar patch. The problem really with sports is that every time we've gone, oh, this will be a simple integration, we'll just grab some data and display it, turns into just this horrible set of updates and builds and everything else, because everyone, it gets really, they're like, oh yeah, we just want something here, and then it becomes everyone wants something to be exactly the way that they ask for it, and there's nothing that's standard. There's nothing that really standardizes as well as we think it will. Like, we're like, oh, it'll just work, and then it doesn't.
So the only thing I have right now is there is a score graphic, and then from there you can, it's kind of like a best case scenario, but you can set the score levels is what I call it. Even finding terms is difficult for this kind of stuff. But so in here you could have up to 4 score levels depending on your sport or whatever you're up to. And then within the score section here, again, this can be open from like an iPad on the same network. You can give people control of what each of those sections or levels, do. But like you said, it's just, as soon as you do that, it's kind of like as soon as you go into that area, people will grab it, which is great, and then they will have their slant on it, and it's really hard to just keep all that in track and maintainable as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Danny Law in Malaysia is up next. He says, can it be integrated into Ecamm?
If Ecamm allows you to put in well, first of all, I'm guessing, I haven't actually used Ecamm myself, but if it lets you do any sort of chroma keying and stuff, then yes, that's perfectly fine. You could just capture the output window on your computer. But if it lets you, like OBS and vMix does, lets you input a browser URL and put that over top of your stream, then I can't see any issues right there. It's possible that they don't use Chromium under the hood if they do that kind of thing, but I'd be surprised as well. So give it a try. Let me know, and we can maybe figure something out.
Next question.
Alton Christensen in Brooklyn, New York asks, or is curious if or how this might integrate with Mimo Live.
I think that'll be the same answer to the previous question, but I believe Mimo Live does let you do a browser source. So unless I'm mistaken, you could do the same thing, transparent background, and then that would work nicely for you.
Next question.
Charles Klein is interested in what language you prefer to code in.
Whenever I was starting to do development stuff, I was going to a lot of JavaScript conferences, not because I wanted to go to them. I was recording them. I was the streaming recorder there, so I was just absorbing all the information. And after a while, I just settled on that to be the language to code in. I've looked into other versions, but as soon as you start veering into other languages, there's a time frame where you need to get up to date on that language and learn all about it. So it sort of takes you away from any of the projects you want to work on. So I've stuck with JavaScript or flavors of JavaScript, and I'm pretty happy with that.
Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan in Georgia says, John, can you demo what Here2Record looks like for the viewers?
What it looks like for the viewers, I'm not entirely sure what you mean. I mean, I guess what you're seeing on my camera shot right now, all the graphics that have come in, is exactly what it looks like. And then
I'm sorry, John, I was asking because it looked like everything was the back end, and I'm a novice, and I'm not real familiar with this kind of thing. I just wanted to know what it would look like for someone who was actually watching you do your magic, what it would look like to them. That's what I was asking. And I apologize for.
It's a good question, just to make sure. I guess that would have been a good place to start. But really, anyone watching my live streams, in fact, you can jump in and watch them. But I'm showing some graphics on screen right now that kind of give you a flavor of what it ends up looking like. Since you have lots of control over the colors and all that kind of stuff, it's going to look very different for your particular stream. But for an average viewer, you'll just see names slide in or fade in and fade out. Simplicity is kind of what I wanted to go for as much as possible. And then the rest of the stuff is just information.
Next question.
Dave Node here in the panel from Charlotte, North Carolina says, would you consider a simple, inexpensive license? It could just include time, countdown clock, and a couple of messages that could be deployed for speaker timers in live events.
There is already a simple, inexpensive license because that's the core application itself. Much of what I've showed today was all free things. So multiple outputs, some of the really sort of fancier graphics, those are the kind of things in the Pro license, and you can check out on the website for that stuff. But the core application, until I mentioned the word Pro today, everything I showed you before that, all of the rundown that you're seeing, like I said, on this PC that I'm showing here, this is running the free download application. So if you download this, you'll see all of these features that I'm showing here, and you'll get to show as many lower thirds as you want, or you could change that into timers and then show those on a screen in front of a speaker. So that's been my sort of core idea behind the application itself, is make as many features as possible as free as they were before, and then just allow for Pro upgrades on the what I would consider more complex setups like multiple outputs, multiple projects, and Pro graphics.
I just didn't see the countdown clock seemed to be locked to Pro, and the main time clock was limited in size. I couldn't fill the screen with it. So
a couple of things to try there are scaling options in the content, but also if you head over to the theme, there's another reason that you can sort of choose whatever theme you want for a graphic, is that you could create a specific theme with huge text and then set that specifically to that timer, and that'll let you do pretty much exactly what you're trying to create. But if you can't find that, then shoot me a message and maybe I can allow for bigger text or specific use cases.
And for our producers, if you have any other questions for John, we're running a little low on the questions. We've gotten through a lot. John's very specific, so he just moves through. He's cutting through your questions very fast. But if you have any other ones, go ahead and throw them in there. Let's go to the next question.
Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California up next. He says, are you considering adding another coder, and how would you go about hiring if so?
That's a good answer to or a good question. I was going to answer the question earlier on the show, which was what's keeping your company back, or something along those lines. And definitely more people is where I'm sort of hitting that wall right now with 3 active projects, graphics, gear, and layouts. There's only so much I can do in a day. So what's keeping me back from hiring someone else is that I haven't really figured out the best process of hiring that person. I'm set up as like a self-employed person, so trying to decide what way to go from that point. And we actually have a monthly developers only chat. Some of the people over on my Discord, and a couple of the people who are here as well, like Jonas and Andy and stuff like that. We have a monthly chat and talk about these kind of things. And that is one of the hardest things to figure out, is how to take that next step and hire someone and put your trust in them and see what their vision is. So I'm certainly wanting to do it and thinking about doing it, and almost kind of need to do it, but just the process of that is not an easy task so far.
Good, Noah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very common small business bottleneck, is hiring people and getting that going. So I encourage you to do so if that's something that interests you. Not that I'm that person, but I think what you're doing is exciting, and to see that grow out and expand would be amazing too.
The way that we've approached a lot of that as Top Tall has been the thing that we've been the most successful with, because you just get programmers that are already rated from around the world. So it's been really successful for especially when you're dealing with JavaScript. It's a very common skill set. Next question.
Next one comes over. Whoops, it didn't push over. So
it did. I pushed them over because they weren't getting pushed over. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay, the first, this one comes from Noah Sargent again in Fullerton, California. And Noah says, can you talk through the price structure?
Certainly, yeah. Again, in the interest of simplicity, I've tried to keep that simple as well. So there's only two options. One is free, which is many of the features that I've showed already. And then pricing, I'll just scroll down on the website here. But for Pro at the minute, sort of a limited time offer, you get the V2 license, which gives you updates as long as V2 is a thing. V1 was a thing for about 3 years. We'll see how long V2 lasts for, but I have a lot of stuff to add to it. So it'll be a while. And just to clarify from before, what that gets you is like the multiple outputs, the ability to create new projects, some of those pro graphics that I showed off. And what you also get with that, which is something that I never thought people would want before, but they seem to really like having, is themes to get them going. So the app comes with a couple of themes, but I also have this theme pack. You could buy that separately, or if you get a pro license, then this volume 1 of the theme pack is part of that. So hopefully that's nice and clear for you.
And that's a perpetual license?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's great. Next question.
Sky Gleason here on the panel often says from Seattle, are you inspired by StreamYard?
I actually have never used StreamYard before. I've used Restream, which I guess is, I've seen StreamYard in action a little bit, but not specifically. I guess that's the fast answer, not specifically.
Yeah. Next question.
Next one comes from Danny Law in Malaysia, and Danny asks, the Pro license stated that you can only activate on 2 computers. Can you deactivate and install on a different computer? And if possible, is there a finite number of times that you can do so?
That is a great question, and something that I hadn't fully considered on the way in, because I forgot how many people have so many different computers. But yes, there's no current deactivation method, but that is something I will add in the future. And as for the finite times you can do so, I will update you on that as soon as that is a feature in practice. But for now, it's 2 computers simultaneously, and then I need to add the deactivation process.
Next question.
Nathan GS in Singapore up next, and he says, how hard do you have to push H2R Graphics to get it to crash, or in what circumstances would it hang or crash? Do you know?
The way to do this is to ask people very nicely to test your app for you, and you will be very impressed by what kind of stuff they'll do. There's been a few alpha testers that have really helped me out in the early days. And one in particular, he sends me lots of messages where he'll just like click, space, click, delete, add, like rigorously test these things. So I personally find it very hard to do that for my own application, because I allow it to have issues in a sense, because you overlook those sort of things as soon as you start to build them sometimes. So giving it to other people, letting them install it on their computer, and then getting people like that who will just try their best to break it will do a really good job of it.
Next question.
Next one comes from Mark Horner in Seattle, Washington. He said, you've recently spoken on your YouTube channel about possibly allowing user access to CSS in H2R Graphics for further customization. Could you please talk about that?
Absolutely. One of the things I mentioned on my previous second hour here was a lot of features that I don't add is not because I don't want them in there. It's just that I haven't found yet where they sit within the application. So whether that's a UX issue, or even just like, where should that button specifically live at? And does that make sense to live there? And CSS, custom CSS is one of those sorts of issues where in the previous version of V1, I added custom CSS and I wasn't really happy about the way I implemented it. So, so this time I really wanted to consider that a lot. But in general, custom CSS allows you to make each graphic look whatever way you want it to look. In the theme editor, I've given you sort of handles to play with, and that just changes CSS. So if you imagine that, but you could say, instead of padding changing on all the sides, it just changes on one side. But really at this point, it's about a UX, UI kind of problem.
One of the things that we've done in the past with that is to just create kind of an open architecture. So I don't try to figure out the UI. Just give someone, like, you can just cut and paste something in here and it will take over. Like, so if someone wants to do it, like it's, like we just put, like, for instance, within Conduit, as we built it, it was always like, there's a JavaScript, and I guess, that exists also for Isadora. There's just a JavaScript holder that you just throw things into. and it'll do whatever you want it to do. But that way we didn't have to figure out everything. That was kind of like the catch-all. It's just pull it all in.
In a sense, that's kind of what I did with V1, and I wanted to not do that again. But I think absolutely I agree. And I think what I had before was a bit more of a less smart way of doing it. And what I wanted to do is feel more like, if you've played with CSS before, there's lots of really fast, intelligent tools that you can use to auto guess CSS and all those kind of things. So it's like a consideration, but for sure, it'll probably feel like that, a big box where you just throw CSS in there.
Yeah. Next question.
Tommy Chance in St. Paul, Minnesota is up next with anything new or upcoming in either layout or gear.
Not layout just yet, but gear. Actually, I wanted to show. So one of the biggest requests I got after my previous chat on here about gear, I spent most of the time talking about that last time, which was excellent. But one of the newest features in that already that you can get if you're on a pro or personal plan is in your plans here, you can now export a PNG of that plan. So from there, you can choose anywhere from 1x. This is in terms of quality. So 1x is about what it looks like on my screen right now, but up to 10 times that size.
Yeah, that's resolution.
Exactly. So
if you want to print it.
So if you want to print it out, so I tend to go for somewhere around the 5x mark. And you can always also choose if you wanted to have like the background that you can see in the background or something transparent. And from there, if I download that PNG and open it up, it creates this this huge, even better quality than in the web app PNG of this this plan here. So I could drag that into Keynote or something. In fact, I showed off earlier, I think I had it here, that my gear plan during the mic check. So having that transparent PNG background, and then just throw it into something else, print it off if you want, or bring it into a Word document and write around it. So that's one of the newest features in there to share off.
And can you show us a little bit? We have a little bit of time. Can you show us how do you define a new object inside of gear to kind of take you a different? Is that like if I want to create something that doesn't exist in the list?
Yes, you can certainly do that. So there's a couple of ways to do it. One is if you have something in the list. I know you said it doesn't exist in the list, but if it does kind of exist in the list, and you want to adapt it from there, you can create a copy and edit that copy. But if you really want to get, oh wait, I'm not even showing my screen. You can create a copy if it's already exists. But if you want to build it yourself, then you go into the builder here on the app, and from there you can kind of decide exactly what you want that item to be. So if I was going to create something, I could type in what it might be called, add its inputs and its outputs, and go from there. And so. And that is a good point to what was asked before. So currently on a plan, you can make some edits to a old piece of gear that you've added in there, but an upcoming release will let you do this full builder experience within the plan. So you open up a piece of gear, and let's say you didn't want to show a couple of the inputs, or you thought this is a constant, I'm going to use the word argument, but a constant argument is that Ethernet a input or an output? And I'm okay with it being only one of the two. So I might drag that over and say that it's actually an output on this device, or it's actually an input on that device. So you'll have a lot more control over what you think or where you think things should be.
Right. That's great. Next question.
Kenny Hampton's up next. Will you clarify, are your apps available on both Mac OS and Windows? Do they contain the same feature sets between the two versions?
Yes, they do. And that's one of the really good things about using that Electron build process that I based all this on, is I can just write it once. I can write it on my PC, I can write it on my Mac, and I can build it for PC, build it for Mac. So if you download the two applications and compare them side by side, you wouldn't actually see any difference at all. So while they don't technically feel like native apps, which is a different way to go, they will run the exact same and look the exact same basically on both of the platforms. Currently there's a Intel-based macOS version, and I am working on the M1 build as well, just having a few final little tweaks to make, and then I'll have an M1 version of that as well.
Next question.
Next one comes from Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California again. He says, can an account add extra licenses for adding more than 2 computers?
The checkout process that I have right now is just single. It's based on your email address, and you can only really buy 1 license at a time, but you could just use the same email address and do the purchase again, and then those 2 purchases are linked within your account. It's just the payment provider that I chose, and that's one of their limitations right now. But you could just do that, and that would both be linked within your account, and you could use that on 2 more computers.
Next question.
And Nathan GS in Singapore is up next with any plans for a Raspberry Pi version.
I do definitely have plans, and I've been talking about it for months now, and I've been pushing it back until I released this app, because I didn't want to rush into that. And then I was talking to our good friend Jonas the other day, and he mentioned that there's been a new version of Raspberry Pi OS out, and it's broken lots of JavaScript related things. So I'm very glad that I held off on that as far as I have. So I'm waiting for others to overcome those issues before I go right into that. But just to give you an option in the meantime is that you can run the output URL on a Raspberry Pi in the same network, and it will work just fine. In fact, at a gig I did a few months ago, in a very early test version of this, I ended up running 3 different paddle courts at the same time with 3 different Raspberry Pis, and the multi-output mode in H2R Graphics showing different graphics on each one of them, and it worked really nicely. So it is possible to show an output in like a kiosk style mode already on a Raspberry Pi.
That's the problem with procrastination, is that it pays off often enough that you go, oh, see, that was the right. I just had one recently where I put it off, and then someone came back and said, let's change the whole thing. And I was really glad that I hadn't spent as much time as I had spent on it.
Sometimes it works out.
Yeah. You know what they say, that hard work pays off someday, but procrastination pays off today. Anyway. All right. John, thank you so much for your time. It's so exciting to see you continuing to add this stuff, and thanks for coming and talking to us about it.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a pleasure. And the last time I was here, I quit my job a few days before that, and luckily I still not got that job, and things are going pretty good. So
has it been going well? Has the independent life worked out?
It has. And I think I was just thinking about that before I came on here. I mean, communities like the Discord servers that I have, and the Officers community, like being part of those communities is what really makes all that difference, actually. And if it wasn't for those communities, it would be a lot harder. And if there's anybody, I know this is like a little message, but if there's anybody out there thinking about doing that sort of thing, this seems like a perfect time to do this kind of thing. Try it out and get in these communities and share applications knowledge and stuff. So it's going well.
Absolutely. And you're still enjoying the tiny house?
I still am enjoying the tiny house very much. It gets a bit cold in the minus winter weather that we've been having for the last few weeks as we go into the winter here, but it's great. I'm
so jealous. I wanted a tiny house forever, and when I see it, I'm just like, oh, I really want that. I want to roll one. I have kind of this lower yard, and there's a little flat space, and I look at that flat space as the parking place for my tiny house that I can have as an office.
I'm on my way.
Yeah, that's so great. I might ping you for notes. Anyway, it's just so cool. Anyway, so thank you so much. Thanks to our producers who did a great job of asking great questions. Thanks to the panelists, of course, every day coming in here and sharing your knowledge. Really appreciate you. And thanks. Reminder that Tony Mobley has a show today. 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and it's conversations with Tony Mobley. Maybe someone can put it into Makana, but you can search it on the web. It's easy to find in YouTube. So definitely check that out with Lois Richter. It should be a great conversation. She's got a lot of production history, and I think she's gonna be a great guest. So stay tuned for that. And now we're going to go ahead. We're going to do Isadora here with Elle in just a couple minutes in Tlaloc, in just a few minutes in After Hours, which will start right now.